Hi folks, how are you doing? The round number 13 is underway in Khanty-Mansiysk, Russia. In this Candidates 2014 tournament, already a couple of games have finished. And I think the game I'm going to show here, the game between Dmitry-Andreikin as white and Levon Aronian as black, is quite interesting one. This was kind of the last chance and Aronian had any chance of catching up with Anand. So he had to more or less win this game in any case and hope for Anand to lose. So this was a very crucial game, of course, for the Armenian GM. Let us see what happened. Remember, he is black, Andreikin is white. So Andreikin plays d4, knight f6, bishop g5. We have the Trompowsky variation, the Trompowsky opening, and well, g6. Certainly not the most common way of facing the Trompowsky, but you know Aronian, he likes original positions. He sometimes makes lots of strange looking moves to get very new looking positions, and certainly today he had to try for some unknown and complicated stuff to try to win this game. So he plays g6. Well, you can bet that the most natural looking move here is to take on f6. He takes f6, and well, so white gives up his bishop pair, as he usually does, by the way, in this opening, to spoil black's pawn structure. And I guess both players are quite happy here with what they have. Here c4 was played, absolutely correct. You know, e4 may seem natural as well. You taking control of all the central squares with the pawns, but the point that black has the pawn on f6 is actually helping him right now, because he's in time to play a very nice d5 move. Comes just in time. And now, for instance, if he takes d5, the queen can take, and if knight c3, trying to chase it, now bishop b4, forking the knight, and getting ready to castle is really looking good for black. I mean, you don't care that much about having doubled pawn here if you're being so much ahead in development, so this is really looking nice for black. Other options weren't either very good here for white. For instance, if e5, now very interesting, bishop g7, and the bishop is doing a good job there. Actually, the pawn on e5 is under attack now, so if he takes, queen takes on f6, the pawn on d4 is under attack. Once again, black is going to castle immediately, and white is still to develop his pieces. So as you can see, this g6 response of Aronian against the Trompowsky isn't that that shy one, isn't that a stupid move maybe, but okay, Andreikin plays the correct one here, c4 to stop immediate d5. I guess it's still possible, but maybe he's in time to play more solidly, for instance e3, something like that, and maybe this is not black is not getting developed that easily as in the previous variations. Black could do still, I mean, bishop g7 for instance, playing in a similar way, that in a kid way, in a King's Indian defense way. And here white here should Andreikin here should catch up with with development white, because if he tries to use all his central pawns to control all the central squares, he could be in problem. Short castle, knight f3, now rook e8, the pawn on e4, missing big danger, so he might even lose a pawn. White might even lose a pawn if he is not fast enough to catch up in development. But okay, lots of possibilities here. Aronian chose not a natural looking one really, but an interesting move. Bishop b4 check, knight d2, and now he plays c5, striking against white center with the c pawn. And well, of course, if d takes right now, the bishop takes back, and black could be more or less happy. He will try to play d5 as soon as possible, but Andreikin plays in a more concrete way, forcing line a3, and you more or less have to give the bishop for the knight here. Otherwise, if bishop a5, I mean, white is threatening to take on c5 and play b4, defend that pawn, chase your bishop back, and well, black will struggle to find compensation for that pawn. His pawn structure will be really damaged, and the d7 pawn, for instance, will be a really awkward and weak looking one. So well, taking here is more or less forced. Queen takes. Now c takes d4 was played. Knight f3. White keeps developing. Knight c6. And now Andreikin takes on d4. The knights are exchanged, and now Aronian thinks, well, decides to go for this queen check, queen a5 check. Well, it's possible to play queen d2, try to exchange queens there, but he decides to go b4. He's winning some space in the queen side, which could be eventually very useful in this almost endgame looking position. So queen e5 is the move here that Aronian had in mind. And of course, if white takes on e5, nothing really bad about that move, but he will be healing black's pawn structure. So, well, Dmitry doesn't rush and keeps developing. Long castle. Now the rook protects the queen. a5. Of course, it would be a dream for black to open up the a file and make his rook play and attack this the king on c1. But Andreikin closes that option, b5, and now d6. For instance, if black castles here, d takes e5, it could seem that black solves his pawn structure. A problem which in at some point is true, but if f takes c5, c5 could be played, and now black has lots of really problems because white has a 3 against 2 really strong on the queen side. The bishop on c8 will have a tough time to be developed. The rook is not playing on a8, and the d7 pawn will be a backward pawn. Really, lots of pressure could be put against this pawn. For instance, rook d6, g3, bishop g2. The other rook goes to d1, and this is really very, very uncomfortable position for black, with almost no space and a couple of serious weaknesses on the queen side, and also this d7 pawn is really looking weak. So after b5, d6 was played by Aronian, and now Andreikin forces black to take with the d pawn. Queen takes e5, as if f takes e5. Of course, the rook takes the pawn for free on d6, so Levon has to take with the d pawn, takes e5. His pawn structure remains not a good one, and well, white is already kind of controlling the d file, but still this is a kind of a playable position. Here g3 is Andreikin's choice to develop the bishop on the big diagonal. Interesting idea, and a favorable point here in this middle game and in the rising end game will be the point that will favor white. It will be that his 3 against 2 on the queen side is quite advanced, and it's easier to make much easier to make a passed pawn here on the queen side for white than to make a passed pawn for black here on the king side, when black has certainly 5 against 4, but as he has this doubled pawn and his development is really far behind, making a passed pawn here on the king side is very, very difficult for black. So that's one of the main points here in white's favor, I think. Well, black plays bishop e6, still developing the bishop and attacking c4, and some tactical sequences here. Bishop g2, Andreikin attacks b7 on his turn, so bishop takes c4, bishop takes b7 is played. After rook b8, Aronian, I think he said in the press conference, I didn't really see that entirely because the official website was working very poorly. I think he said this is pretty much an equal position, and well, he's probably right. Bishop c6 check, he plays king f8. Well, going to e7, I mean, rook d7 check. Now if you go to e6, the other rook goes to d1, and Black king isn't very well placed there, but okay, maybe playable, but doesn't seem very comfortable to have to give white all these tempos. Well, instead king f8 is played after the check, so white protects his pawn with a4. Now bishop b3, attacking the pawn and the rook at the same time, and here a very risky and brave decision by Andreikin, really kudos to him. He allows black easily to take the exchange. He plays king b2 attacking the bishop, and Aronian certainly, it seems, the best he had was to take on d1. Let us see what kind of position we could get. Rook takes d1, and now, for instance, he could try h5 to try to play h4 and get the rook developed from the h8 square very fast. He could also try, after rook takes, to play, for instance, king g7, I don't know, king b3, f5, king c4. This white king really has an easy way to go towards the center and be an important piece here. And otherwise, for instance, here instead of king g7, king e7 was another possibility, but now king d7 check, and the point is that now is different than a couple of variations, couple of moves ago, because there is no other rook to go and bother this black king on e6, so there is not much danger on e6 for the black king. And I don't know, rook a7 could follow. The rook cannot go to a8 to defend the pawn. The bishop is there. So, for instance, rook hd8, controlling the open file. White is probably going to take a5, but black will have counterplay on the open file, going behind with the rooks. So complicated position. Certainly an interesting one. I think white has enough compensation for his material imbalance, but it's a pity. I think Aronian didn't go for this. Instead, after king b2, he took on a4, but this doesn't seem the best decision. Let us see why. Of course, he's attacking now his upper pawn, and he's attacking the pawn on b5 with the bishop and the rook. But now, after rook d5, defending that, king e7, king a3, only move for black, bishop c2, rook d7 check, king f8, and d4. Black is up a pawn, but his position is worse actually, because white pieces are much more active. And also for the pawn structure, black's pawn structure is much worse, and he's very likely to be losing his a pawn. Well, white's bishop is a monster there. White has the control of the d file, so probably Aronian regretted later his decision of not taking the rook on d1. Here a4 was played by Levon, rook c1 attacking the bishop. After bishop b3, Andreikin plays bishop d5, forcing the exchange of the bishops, consolidating his control of the open files. Bishop takes, taking with the pawn, of course, would drop the b5 pawn. So white takes with the rook back, and his rooks are really looking much better than black pieces. King g7, Aronian tries to activate his other rook on h8, but rook c7, white rooks are really looking good, very active, controlling lots of squares, while black pawns, for instance, are very weak. Doubled pawn here, very weak pawn there. Rook b6, Aronian obviously on defensive mode. This is a difficult, tough position for him. Rook c6, trying to exchange rooks. Of course, black must avoid that. Point here is that taking on a4 right away wasn't that great, because the rook a8 check, king b3, you have to try to avoid black from getting behind with the rooks and having counterplay, but still rook a1, and this would generate lots of counterplay for black, maybe enough to equalize the game. Still complicated because you have white has a passed pawn there, but it may be even vulnerable because there are a couple of rooks which could be coordinated to attack it, so this would give lots of relief to black. Instead, it's much more accurate to play here rook c6, so that, well, black will refuse it. Rook b7, and now after king takes f4, rook a8 check, you have this rook a6 blocking the check, and you're not allowing black to get behind. Still rook c8, and white has a tempo to get the pawn to b6. The rook goes to c2. Well, I mean, doesn't make that much sense to go, for instance, to c6 attacking, because very simply king b5 attacks the rook, defends the pawn. Rook c2 looks more natural, of course, trying to get behind, get some pawns maybe, to generate counterplay, bother the king, who knows. The king goes back to up to b5, and Levon takes on f2 finally. The engines say that this is not the best decision, as he's losing the control of the c file and the king is being much strong now. It goes in. Let us see what is. It seemed to be better. Rook b2 check. If king c6, rook e7, rook a7 doesn't seem that great because rook e6 check, back and forth. But what else? Well, the engine suggests to play some moves, but you really don't get them that much, because in these endgames it's much more about the classical knowledge about endgames you have than in engines. Let us see what it suggests. f3, h5, rook c5, rook b3, g4, h4, h3, and the long line of moves. I mean, it's difficult, of course. White is much better, but at least the computer, it seems that he doesn't find a very reliable way to continue to get in. But taking on f2 certainly is leaving white the possibility, the very natural looking move, to play king c6. The king goes in, rook e7, rook a to a5 to block, I guess, someday the attack. I mean, if the rook on f2 goes to b2, so to be able to put a rook on b5 and block the attack of black rook against your pawn. Now rook e6 check, rook d6, rook e7, rook back to b5, and after rook e6 once again check, king c7, and now once again, as we have seen in this tournament more than once, huge time trouble for both players at this point. Rook e7 check, king c8, and here literally with just seconds on their clocks, Aronian plays rook e8 check. Well, it seems his best practical chance was to give up the rook for the pawn and take the one on h2. Rook takes h2, and if b7 you have to give up the rook. King takes and try to make kind of a fortress with his pawns. Rook e2, but still this seems very dim. And rook a7, and if rook takes e4, rook d7, say rook e3, king c6, white is attacking on the 7th rank, and well, maybe black could hold somehow, but seems really a difficult position once again. Instead he plays rook e8 check once again, and here after king d7 he plays king f8, literally with seconds on his clock. I think he made the time control with just 1 second on his clock, so really craziness there. But still, now b7 position seems really completely winning one. Rook a8 is threatened. Now rook e7 check, king c6, rook e6 check, king c7, and the point is that after rook e7, easily king b6, the king will go to h7, a8, and the pawn will be pushed. So this position is more or less hopeless. And Aronian resigned the game after 44 moves. And really not a good tournament for the Armenian Grandmaster at all. He was hoping, of course, to be on the top spots, to be the challenger against Magnus Carlsen. And strangely enough, Andreikin, who was more or less the underdog of the tournament, replaces Aronian as one of the players sharing second. And well, another candidate's tournament goes by for the Armenian GM. Let us see what happens in the remaining round and in the remaining games here in the 13th round.